Welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. On today's episode, we're definitely going to be talking about one of the more important aspects of this hobby. And if you want to be a better Pokemon collector and investor, this is definitely one of the top things you can do to help yourself grow in this hobby. And that's just finding something in this hobby that's yours. And yes, that might sound very cliche, but it's really not cliche. And there is a reason why so many people always say you should always collect what you love because it's the best investment. And it is. But it's really not that simple either. And, that's something like people will tell new collectors to, build them up. But just to collect what you love is not the correct thing to say. What you should be saying is by collecting what you love, it's going to allow you to gain the tools to help you in this hobby. And by gaining those tools, what I mean is when you start to understand niches within collecting of Pokemon, and I don't care what your niche is. I don't care if it's individual character cards, if it's different sets, if it's promos, if it's trophy cards, or anything in between, specialty sets. I don't care what you collect, but if you find that niche that you become an expert in, and with the day and age we live in, the internet's out there. Any question you have, especially from set histories to cards or products that are out there, it's a very easy Google search nowadays to pretty much find a lot of the information that you might want to find about certain sets. And once you start to absorb that knowledge, and you can start to do a lot of things with that knowledge. When you start to interpret that knowledge and help it benefit you as a collector, that's when you're really, really going to go, from maybe a beginner or a novice to an expert. No one can be an expert at everything in Pokemon. That's impossible. And if anyone, ever tries to tell you that they are an expert in every single facet of Pokemon collecting, it's a lie. There's just too much to absorb. But with that said, you can become an expert in certain aspects of this hobby. And the reason why is because it's very easy to find your niche, especially if it's something you are really passionate about or a part of this hobby that you love. And it's okay to like things in this hobby that other people don't like. It's okay to say Charizard's not my favorite card. You can still understand that it's the most expensive cards in most sets normally. But you can also say you don't collect Charizards, and that's okay. And that's why it's so important to collect what you love. Because if you're collecting what you love, whatever subset of Pokemon you want to collect, and yeah, if you want to go for it all, sure, go ahead. But a lot of, the cards out there to really make it possible for you to love everything or collect everything financially probably will never be possible unless you're just a multi-millionaire, to a degree that I can't really comprehend, at least at this point in the game. But you can continue to build on your collection and start to find gaps in the market. And when you start to find gaps, you're going to start to understand market conditions a little bit better. And, there are a lot of areas in this market right now that there is what I would consider very undervalued cards. And you probably can find undervalued cards in tons of different subsets of this hobby. But the only way you're going to start to find what works out for you or what subset, you find very interesting is you got to start doing your due diligence, and you got to start doing your homework, and you really have to start researching different products. And if you're newer to this hobby or returning to this hobby, there are, easy areas to go to. If you're returning to this hobby, it's very easy to go back to whatever vintage sets you grew up with. Sure, that's easy. Or modern, right? Because modern's just what's out there. And it's easy well, I shouldn't say it's easy. Definitely not easy to get product right now, but it's more readily available for a cheaper amount for the most part, especially compared to, sealed product for modern versus sealed product for vintage. So I just sit back and I say, well, what was my last 3 purchases? Because people ask me this all the time. They say, well, what are you doing? Because I do believe that in the very, very near term, Pokemon will see like a lot more growth than just what we are seeing now. Part of that is involved with Logan Paul, but I think a lot of new investors will continue to get into this hobby. I think as long as Pokemon can't meet the demand that's available, it's going to continue to create the drive and people are going to want the product just because it's not available. I know that's very opposite thinking, right? That you would normally think that the lack of supply would drive people out. But in fact, I think that's going to be beneficial for the hobby. But like I was saying, I think what were my last 3 purchases? And my last 3 purchases were all Skyridge cards because that's a section, or not a sector, but that's an area of Pokemon TCG that I've always been, very interested in with. And I sort of missed that timeline. It fell within, the years of Pokemon that I wasn't into this hobby hardcore because, I was either, well, let's see, 2003, I was in middle school. Beginning of high school. So I wasn't really worried about, collecting Pokemon cards. I was worried about teenage angst and all that bullshit that, you go through. I fell out of Pokemon a little bit at that timeline. So I am trying to go back and revisit the sets that I missed at that time. And no matter where I went, no matter where I looked within the hobby, I was always drawn back to Skyridge. So my last 3 purchases, I have 2 PSA 10s I purchased and 1 raw card. And, it's very important when it comes to vintage, in my opinion, is that when it comes to PSA 10s, we will not see a huge influx of PSA 10s for vintage. And I don't even care if a lot of the cards that are pulled, with like more recent pack breaks or, people finding like even very, very near mint cards in their collections, when they send them away for grading to PSA, you will not see as many 10s as we have in the past. And it's just because there's other card grading companies, especially like CGC and Beckett, who do hand out, just 9.5s for what would be a PSA 10, gem mint. It's just PSA will not grade their cards as loosely as they have in the past because there are a lot more eyes on grading. And I think graders are just becoming used to what is the new norm of a very strict grading scale opposed to what we've seen in the past, which was a very loose grading scale. And, you will hear it from older people who have been, or I shouldn't say older people age-wise, but people that have been grading cards for a little while. You will see them look at some cards that have very clear, chips in the corner or a little bit of whitening in the corner, or the card surfaces aren't perfect, or maybe the centering is not perfect. And you'll hear people say, this card might grade a 10. No, that was an older way to grade cards. And it's the truth. PSA 10s are not what they used to be. And it's a good thing because what they are now opposed to what they used to be is way better. A PSA 10 that gets graded today, the quality of that card is so much better than a PSA card that was graded 3 years ago. It just is. And, we will see that. So anyways, that's why I've been trying to pick up a lot of PSA 10s right now, not just for Skyridge. Those are just 3 of my last purchases, 2 of them being PSA 10s, but just PSA 10s in general, because I do believe, and this is coming from a vintage aspect, I do believe we will see less and less new cards hit the market. Obviously, the cards that have already been graded, they're not going to change. But the newer vintage cards going to grading from all these pack breaks and box breaks and people rediscovering their old collections, we just won't see as many PSA 10s. So I think the populations will still stay relatively low. The only reason I'm talking about, my most recent purchases, I don't want you guys to go out there and, buy a bunch of Skyridge PSA 10s. Well, first of all, this channel is way too small, so there's no way we're cornering that market. But the only reason I bring that up is because it's very important for you guys to recognize market and market conditions. And I do believe that I found a gap in the market that is going to grow very quickly. And the cards that are within that subset of which is Skyridge, especially high grade PSA 10 cards. And you can get a lot of PSA 10 Skyridge cards for what I would consider, very cheap for what the card is. And there is a possibility, and this is where I to say, all right, guys, time out. Let's all put on our tinfoil hats. I do believe that there is a chance that because Skyridge is such a fan favorite set, or a lot of, older collectors' favorite sets, or a set that might not be your favorite because you weren't emotionally involved in it. You didn't have the ability to rip a lot of packs because, to try to rip unopened Skyridge packs would cost you a fortune right now. Booster boxes, we've just watched them throughout the year just continue to go up in price. But we haven't really seen the price in PSA 10 cards, chase after those price in the booster boxes the way I expected. And if for any reason the 25th anniversary is a reprint of Skyridge, which at this point I would say the percentage of that happening is like 0.01%. So, to think of that Dumb and Dumber quote. So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah, I do believe there's a chance. Do I have any way to back up this, theory of mine? No way. And it's definitely me going out on a limb. But even if we don't see it for the 25th, I wouldn't rule it out of the history of Pokemon to never potentially see a reprint, of a very popular yet very underrated, and underrated is a gray area to call this set, but maybe a set that's very popular but not super mainstream. I think that would be a better way to phrase that. Because just to do another reprint of base set is lazy at this point. We've already seen it done so many times. We saw it happen, I don't know, with base set 2. That was the first time we saw it. And how many times have we seen, reprints of base set? We've seen it all the way up to 2016 with Evolutions. And like I've said in other videos, yeah, Evolution's still available in a lot of products. So for them to do a base set reprint for the 25th anniversary would just be so lazy on the behalf of Pokemon. Or for the 25th anniversary, they come out with a standalone set that's something that we've never seen before. But I expect to see some sort of reprint from some sort of vintage set. So I'm just hoping it's Skyridge. Again, I can't prove this, and I have no way of actually knowing if that's true. Now, this is where I need all you guys at home to start, moving out of what your new comfort level in this hobby is and whatever you are currently collecting. I'm not telling you to stop collecting anything that you're enjoying right now, but just continue to grow in this hobby. And again, I don't care what subset of this hobby you find, but please start to find something that is yours, And it doesn't have to really be anyone else's. It just needs to be yours. And, try to find something that you're passionate about. And it's going to continue that learning, and it's going to continue that growth in this hobby. Once you start finding one subset, you'll start branching off to another one here and another one here and another one here, until eventually you're in a position now where you're going to be so comfortable and you're going to be so happy. And, if you're in this for the collecting and the hobby, that's great. You're going to be so rewarded, from an emotional standpoint. But if you're in this for an investing standpoint, or a way to flip cards, or maybe offset the cost of the cards that you do collect by selling some of the stuff you're not super invested in, or emotionally invested in, by finding subsets and finding areas in the market that are weak or undervalued, you're going to do so well if you're able to do that. If you're able to identify things before, the rest of the market catches up to it. And please, that's all I want from this channel. That's all I want from my listeners. I want everybody out there to just be so successful in this hobby. And, that's the reason I made this channel. And yeah, the format of this channel is way different than a lot of other things, that you're going to find on YouTube. And it's just the reason I'm doing this channel is because I enjoy this hobby, and I do enjoy sharing stuff with you, and I do enjoy going on the journey with you guys as my listeners. But hey, if you made it this far in this video, you're the best. You're the reason I do this video. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button. And please hit the like button, because with the YouTube algorithm, it's going to bump up this video, and it's going to make this content available to a lot of other listeners out there. But other than that, guys, I'll catch you on the next video.